with another paper doll of Jesus, and the second one was like bright and shiny. You know, rays of light coming out of Jesus' head and bright white clothes, and his face is even whiter than it was before. And it's like what just happened here? She just swapped out the Jesus doll, and now he's all shiny. And it was so cool. I loved the story, but then as I got older, I thought to myself, wait a minute. Why? What is that all about? No, seriously, think about this. Every miracle Jesus ever does is for the benefit of someone else. He takes blind people and he gives them sight. He takes lame people and he lets them walk. He meets a dead man and raises him back to life. Every miracle Jesus ever does is for other people. And here's a miraculous moment that has no external benefit whatsoever. Why? What's the purpose of this moment? Well, I've come up with 4 ideas, 4 possibilities for you. These are some of the possibilities that I think make sense in terms of the passage, and so I'm just going to list them off for you here. They're blanks. You can fill them in if you want. But here's possibility number 1. Possibility number 1 is that it's all about the Father's message to Peter. Everything is building up to that moment where the Father says to Peter, "This is my son." And the whole passage is really just trying to get us to that moment where Peter hears, "This is my son, pay attention to him." That's possible. The second possibility, however, is this one, that it's all really about the revelation of Jesus' glory to the inner 3, the inner 3 being Peter, James, and John. That in some measure, this entire event is really just to help Peter, James, and John realize on a deeper level how awesome Jesus really is. And so under that mindset, then what's happening here is Jesus, for a brief moment in time, is in glorious fashion the Jesus who existed before he ever came to earth, before he ever took on a body. For a brief moment, it's like a glimpse, as if heaven itself were kind of split open and the reality of who Jesus is kind of shines through. That's possible. That's possible. Maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe Peter, James, and John just really needed to see that for some encouragement. Possibility number 3, this is one I kind of think is a little bit clever. It's a last-minute staff meeting. Here's Jesus, and Moses and Elijah show up because they're having a staff meeting, right? Because there's some stuff that Moses and Elijah need to talk through with Jesus, and, you know, because they've been up in heaven, and they've been doing their job, they've been doing their work, but there's some things that they need to take care of, and so Jesus says, well, let's just have a meeting. Where are you going to have it? Well, I got these guys with me, so let's do it on earth. And how about, this mountain? That's a good spot, because then you don't have as far to go. So let's go up onto the mountain. That's a little closer. So, and I'll bring Peter, James, and John with me too, because, one of these days they're going to have staff meetings too, and it probably makes sense for them to watch and observe. Maybe that's what's going on. Jesus is having a staff meeting with Moses and Elijah, and they're talking about his departure. See, they're making plans. That's what it said. They were talking about Jesus' departure. However, I think something deeper is going on here. As a kid, I always thought it was just that glory thing. But there's one other time when Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him onto a mountain to pray. If you don't remember, I put the verse right there, Mark 14. They went to a place called Gethsemane. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him. And he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Jesus, in his moment of overwhelming sorrow, the night before he is to go to the cross and hang on it for hours in agony, just waiting until the moment when he could release his spirit. The night before that, he takes Peter, James, and John with him. I think what's going on the mountain here, and this is called the Mountain of Transfiguration. This event is called his Transfiguration. I think what's going on here is that Jesus is going up there to pray because he knows in just a couple days he is going to have to set his face on Jerusalem or not. And this is the moment, this is the Gethsemane moment before he makes that final turn towards Jerusalem. See, in Gethsemane, it's the moment before he goes to the cross. This is the moment before he takes that final turn to go to Jerusalem. And so, in a sense, this is a Gethsemane moment for Jesus. I think what's going on here is that this is really all about moral support. Jesus has just finished predicting his death to Peter. Peter says, "You're the Christ." Jesus says, "And by the way, I'm going to be killed." And immediately after that, 8 days later, it says he goes on to this mountain, brings Peter, James, and John with him so that they can pray. Moses and Elijah have this conversation about Jesus' departure. And so I see in this scene what I would call a brotherhood moment. And I'm going to try to explain that to you in just a little bit, but I see in some measure that Peter, James, and John are in the brotherhood development phase with Jesus, and Moses and Elijah are in the brotherhood reality phase with Jesus. In some measure, Jesus has this need for moral support, and it's not enough for Peter, James, and John to be there. And so the Father in heaven sends to Jesus the two guys who would most likely be able to help Jesus go through this next phase. And I'll show you why in just a little bit. But as we get there, as we begin to talk about what that brotherhood looks like, I want to go ahead and just tell you this next statement that's the true lesson of brotherhood for us today. It goes like this: brotherhood or sisterhood takes you to and through your hardest times. Brotherhood and sisterhood takes you to and through your hardest times. And so now I want to analyze what's going on here with you to just show you that this is a brotherhood kind of moment with Jesus. Take a look at some of these things of what true brotherhood or sisterhood is really all about. The first thing is we could say it comes from a long history. When you're with someone for a long period of time, there's a sense of camaraderie that develops just simply because you've been together that long. It's easier to keep that relationship going sometimes than it is to try to sever that and start over. And you don't really want to because you know each other enough, and the other person is still willing to hang out with you. So, I mean, there must be something good going on there. Brotherhood, sisterhood kind of takes a long history. And if you analyze Moses and Elijah, they've had a long history with Jesus. I mean, Jesus has known Moses for 1,400 years at this moment in time. Moses was born about 1400.